This week, the agenda heard from residents dislocated by public housing revitalization efforts. We talked to PC Party leadership hopeful Patrick Brown and got a global risk assessment from the head of the Eurasia Group. The agenda's Week in Review now begins examining efforts to address poverty in the province. I'm going to have Ken comment on this next chart first, but let's bring it up. Sheldon, if you would. Here we go. Some more sad facts of the state of poverty in our province today. Indigenous families with children in the city of Toronto experience an extremely high rate of poverty at 84%. Children in so-called racialized families are more than twice as likely to be living in poverty compared to children in non-racialized families, this again in the Toronto region. Almost 1 in 2 Toronto region children who arrived in Canada between the years 2011 and 2016 live in poverty, half of them. And 13 city wards have areas of child poverty where the rates are 50% or more. 13, that's half the city essentially. Okay, Ken, you're coming in first there. What does that look like on the ground in your daily activities?
You know, Toronto is seen as a very affluent city, and it's a victim of that to some extent, and the people who pay for that are really those who are on the margins. Toronto's got almost two realities. One is the condo consuming, Friday night snacks with the friends. There's another reality, and it's mostly hidden. It's in our inner cities. Only to some extent that's shrinking, but it's more likely to be in the suburbs. They call the inner suburbs, which are old, strip-malled situations that are not like very visible.
Etobicoke, North York, Scarborough.
Yeah, Scarborough primarily. The Scarborough Strip along Kingston Road, for example, that's where those statistics are coming from. And what's interesting, and well, I think it's interesting enough, and it's not sad, but it's certainly something that we have to do something about, and that is the increasing numbers of children that are living in poverty. I run a child welfare-related agency, and the connection between child welfare and Indigenous child apprehension and poverty is an absolute straight line. So it's not just lack of income, and we talk about here about lack of affordability of housing and those sorts of things, and they're fairly abstract. But the reality is you've got a lot of Indigenous kids in care, you've got a lot of racialized kids in the care of the societies. This is what it looks like on the ground. And what's the irony of it is that the government at that point will start spending substantial amounts of money to keep those children in care. So it's a twisted situation that I think we need to step back and have a look at, because apprehending children in poverty doesn't seem to be the right answer. More than that, it's not very successful, because those families keep replicating themselves because of the disruption from the state. So it's tough. So, but we're dealing with, in Toronto, food insecurity with children. We're dealing with young moms living in basement apartments, and I know of this, with an inch of water on the floor. We're dealing with some pretty horrific scenarios. Indigenous women experience it the most, but many others do as well.
Well, Avi, I should go to you next, because you've been dealing in racialized communities for, what, 20, 25 years now. What does it look like from your perspective?
I think we are seeing this phenomenon, what we call the racialization of poverty, which we've been talking about as part of the color of poverty, color of change for the last 10 years.
What exactly does that mean, the racialization of poverty?
So basically, because of the income disparities that we are seeing, the racialized communities, including Indigenous and communities of color, becoming more likely to live in poverty. They live in poverty longer. There's a higher proportion of the families living in poverty from those communities. So giving an example of the stats, right? So we now have like 29.3% of the province of Ontario who are identified as people of color. So the poverty rate for non-racialized groups, like people who don't identify as person of color, is around 11.4%. For racialized groups, it's 21.3%. And if you drill down further, different groups have different rates. South Asian is 18%, Chinese is 22.2%, Black is 24.1%, Arabs is 40.6%, and West Asians is 36.1%. So it's a huge issue for some communities. It's like 4 out of 10 Arabs living in Ontario are poor. And so we really need to understand why that is the case. And I think that one of the big issues is access to good jobs.
The Hamilton area, I think Brantford as well, one of 3 areas in the province of Ontario that were selected to be pilot project studies for the new basic income, which has been in place for several months now.
Indeed it
has. Has it made any difference?
So far, we don't have any of the first evaluation material. We are partnering with the project and keeping in touch. What I can give you is actually stories firsthand of people that have started it. A friend of mine, and I'm going to call him a friend, I've known him for years, we've worked together through the roundtable. He's been on assistance more than a decade, probably closer to 2. And for various reasons. And upon getting basic income, he was able to, for the first time in decades, return home to Timmins to see his family, to see his siblings, to be able to actually help them in their day-to-day lives. And when we talk about income for people and what it can do, people get caught on the dollar amount and, oh, they should be earning that, and they don't understand the deprivation that goes with it. I got an email from him on Christmas Eve, the 23rd actually, of December, saying he was up in Timmins, and man, had it snowed, and it felt so good to be able to shovel his sister's driveway for her. And for me, that's what the money is about.
What did TCHC learn about this that it can apply to future projects?
So one thing that we did in Villaways and a number of our revitalization sites, especially for young people, is we have a youth ambassador program where we invite young people who want to be leaders in their community or aspire to do great things or want to contribute to be part of that program, where we do some leadership development, but more importantly, we ask that they act as ambassadors for their community and connect with other young people. And that is one of the ways, other than going out door to door and visiting families in their homes, that we try to really engage all pockets of the community. And we realize that, you know, there's never enough engagement. We can always do better, and that's something that we've learned a lot through the documentary and through feedback from tenants, from parents, from young people, from people outside of the community, as to how we can humanize the process as much as possible.
Gotcha.
And ensure that people's needs and values are respected throughout.
Charles, last word to you.
I think that the one thing that we haven't really touched on is I read a little note from Andrea Delzato from Tridal. And all due respect to you for watching the film, and I'm grateful for your attention to that, that there is, you know, developers, you know, that are also involved, and we haven't spoken about that. This is one pocket of land where there stands to be X amount of dollars made per unit. We understand in the city that, you know, an average condominium is possibly starting at about 350 grand. If you multiply that by 529 units, that stands to be a substantial amount of money. There's a section where there's going to be a little bit of money that was going to be put back into the community by TCHC, upwards of just about $1.1 million. That was in the proposal. I foresaw that it's like, you know, it's going to go towards developing things around the ravine and the area. What my big question is here, as all these funds and monies are being brought in and profits are being made, and people have been moved off of land, and we've watched things get neglected over numerous years and problems happen. These ideas of bursaries and education and kicking back some of this funds is very, very critical to young people like Levon, to young people like Francine, who don't need a lot. $500 can go a long way in communities for individuals such as this. We're not talking about millions of dollars. And just in our ideas of creating programs, art programs, Art Starts is in there doing things, but it's very tricky when kids are hungry and they have no food to eat. But the government and we are supporting programs, nonprofit programs, to go in there to help inspire youth. They need basic things. They need to be safe. They need food. They need access to food. They need education. They need an opportunity to prosper. These are very basic things. So in our ideas, because I love the idea of progression, I love the idea of people living in beautiful places and homes, but that's just an ideal. It's a utopian that I don't know if we're really going to grasp. But the truth of the matter is that while we're here together, it's very critical for us to have this sort of dialogue so that counselors, people who are represented from organizations can actually see the human beings and understand that if they were in those positions, how would they be reacting? How would they like to be moved? How would they like to be presented these options? It's a big issue, Steve. It's a big thing. And I know that people are working hard to try to make it better. But if we're not listening and taking the time to actually enter the homes of the individuals who are being affected, then our progress is only going to go so far.
Patrick Brown, the ousted leader of the Progressive Conservative Party of Ontario, loves to say that the effort to end the Liberal Party's stranglehold on Queen's Park is, quote, bigger than one individual. The very words he used in a Facebook post on Tuesday. And yet, everything Mr. Brown has done since he resigned as leader on January 25th has been a singular effort to make the PC party and its leadership race precisely about himself. Mr. Brown is indifferent to the damage he is doing and will continue to do to a leadership race that ends in 2.5 weeks. Is this about your personal redemption more than about the future of the province of Ontario?
This is about winning the June 7th provincial election, and I feel that I'm the only candidate in this race equipped to do that because I've got a platform and I've got a team, and frankly, the people of Ontario want someone who's a fighter. They want someone who will stand up to injustices. You don't want someone who will just roll over. I think the people of Ontario want to see someone with tenacity. And I will fight for the people of Ontario in every part of this province, just like I'm fighting back against this injustice, because this cannot be allowed to happen. You know, we had such a movement around the province that had such broad support. The people of Ontario, I know, are behind me, and that's what counts. It's not the people inside the bubble at Queen's Park.
I know. I have heard from numerous people who have said the guy has taken some strides to clearing his name from the issues that came up in that CTV report, but just as many people, I have to tell you, are wondering about why this is the better move, this is the better play for you right now. They thought that, these other folks, thought that if you had continued to try to clear your name, win re-election, perhaps be a cabinet minister in a future PC government if it works out that way, that would be sort of good enough. They're wondering why you're taking this extra step, which, let's face it, has brought some chaos into the party right now.
Chaos for those that might have perpetrated this, chaos for those that don't want to see me get up and fight against this injustice and fight for the people of Ontario. But it comes back to this. It comes back to the document that we built with the grassroots.
Are you the only person running on that?
I'm the only candidate running on a fully costed platform. I'm the only person running on the People's Guarantee.
So that's with the carbon tax?
This is with every aspect of this policy platform. And let me say, on the carbon tax, Steve, listen, I'm a conservative. No conservative likes a tax. But it is intellectually dishonest to say if you're elected on June 7th, the federal government's not going to have carbon pricing. It's a federal requirement. And I'm going to be honest with our party members. I'm going to be honest with the people of Ontario. That's why they built this platform that way. You have two choices. You let Justin Trudeau spend the money or you give it back to the people.
So the other candidates who are running on this document but not with a carbon tax, you think their efforts to fund this program without being specific are what?
It's inaccurate. And so they have two choices. You leave the money with Justin Trudeau, and by doing nothing, that's what they're doing. They're saying they're going to leave billions with Justin Trudeau to mismanage, or they can give it back to the people of Ontario. And in the People's Guarantee, it says that under the federal carbon pricing requirements, which is the law of the land, every cent we're going to give back to the people of Ontario. And so I know it might be popular to say, oh, we're going to fight this, but it's there June 7th. And unless you defeat Justin Trudeau, you're misleading the party membership. And the thing is, the party membership gets that. That's why they voted for this document. That's why the party membership embraced this document in such overwhelming numbers.
Post-American world, Pax America, Pax Americana is truly over. It's not coming back. And there is only one country today that is really trying to assert itself in terms of global leadership. It's China. China is no substitute for the United States, doesn't have the military or the diplomatic capabilities. And where it does have capabilities, like economic and technological, it's not trying to support the U.S.-led order. It's actually trying to create an alternative. And I think that environment is one where all around the world, allies of the United States look to America and say, can we really count on this country? Do we have to go it ourselves? Antagonists and rogue states see more room for operation. in their own backyards and sometimes more broadly. And the potential for major armed conflict is significant. Look, I just got back from Europe just a couple of days ago. I was at the Munich Security Conference. And the theme for the conference, as articulated by its chairman, Wolfgang Ischinger, was "to the brink." And he opened it up by saying that he believed that the world now stands at the precipice of major interstate war, something that certainly I've not heard him say since the Soviet Union has collapsed, now the 54th annual Munich Security Conference, so it's not like they don't have an experience dealing with these things. We've had the Trump administration has been in place for just over a year now. Thank goodness we have not experienced any crises since he's become president. I am suggesting that I don't think that is sustainable.
Well, again, at this Munich Security Conference, the German foreign minister apparently said that China is the only country in the world today with a genuine geostrategic vision. Is this to say that that is further evidence of, I don't know, would you call it an inexorable American decline into less relevance in the world?
Globally, yes. I'm not suggesting that the United States is in decline as a country, as an economy. I think there are lots of things about America. It's going to overtake the Saudis by the end of this year as the world's largest oil producer, something that Canadians are very highly aware of. The United States leads the world in the most advanced technologies in AI together with the Chinese right now. I'm not, and of course the American economy is doing quite well right now. You look at the markets, you look at the growth rates. But the question you asked was America's role in the world. Yes. Inexorable decline. A lot of that is self-inflicted. Some of that is Brexit and the weakness of Europe and the rise of the far left and the far right as opposed to a strong pro-European establishment across the continent. Some of that is the willingness of the Russians to try to undermine the United States and its allies and liberal democracy more broadly. But a big piece of it, as articulated by the German foreign minister last week, and I saw that speech live, is the fact that the Chinese are the only major economy in the world today with a strategy, with a global strategy. And they're building architecture, they're spending an enormous amount of money. And if no one else is, even though you may not like the Chinese as a global leader, you don't feel like you have a lot of a choice.
And the headline on your website was, "China loves a vacuum." So into that vacuum, yes, what are your concerns about what China might do as a result of that being there?
Well, you know that the Belt and Road Initiative, all of this money they're spending on architecture all over the world, when you add it up, is about 7 times the size, the amount of the U.S. Marshall Plan, inflation adjusted. So these are big checks that are being written. So we see this enormous shift because of China's economic strategy and the money behind it, away from a Washington consensus and towards, I guess you'd say, a Beijing consensus, but it's not multilateral. It's rather hub and spoke. It's a whole bunch of smaller countries that aren't serving a common ideology or worldview. They're instead becoming increasingly reliant on and supplicants to Beijing.
And that is the Agenda's Week in Review for this Friday, February 23rd, 2018. You can see all of those conversations in their entirety on our website, tvo.org, on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/theagenda, and on our Twitter feed. That's twitter.com/theagenda.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario, helping businesses stay on the right side of change with strategic thinking, insightful decisions, and business leadership. Are you on the right side of change? Ask an Ontario CPA.